Hello everyone, and welcome back to some more G-Senjou no Maou with me, Phantom's Y. So, let's get right into it. We left off with Eiichi calling every one of us assholes useless. Actually talking about them. Yeah, we're real sorry. Eiichi put on airs of importance the next afternoon.
一体いつになったら女紹介してくれんだよ、宇佐美さんよ。
ですから近日中に。
もういい加減正体バラっちゃうけどさ、俺ちゃんって相当なワルなんだよ。穴があったら入れたい年頃なんだよ。もう待てないっつうの。
He's really dispensed with any airs in front of Usami of being something other than who he really is. It's only been 2 days, and he's already impatient as hell. Alright, I'll tell you what. I'll help you find your dream girl.
今日のところはご勘弁を。
This Joker's mood is just a disaster today. What's got you all riled up this time?
ああ、久しぶりに親父と飯食ってたのよ。
You have a dad?
あれ？確か施設で育ったとか聞きましたけど。
んなもんは全部ブラフだよ。僕の親父はホテルのオーナーやってるよ。
Seriously?
中央区のプラザホテルもグランドホテルもトップオブトマン別も全部親父のもんだよ。
You're shitting me.
嘘だと思うなら今度一泊させてあげようか。
I glanced at Usami.
マジっぽいっすね。
I didn't know at all. I have heard of a hotel owner named Aizawa before. But who would ever believe that he was actually Eiichi's father? Wait a second. For all that calling me rich and pampered, you grew up in a wealthy household too?
おめえと違って親父は厳しいんだよ。爬虫類禁止だぞうちは。ありえなくね？
I see.
それでその親父がよ、夜中の2時くらいに帰ってきたと思ったら仕事の愚痴を始めやがってよ。
プラザホテルのことですか？
なんかさ、客の一人が消えたらしいんよ。確かにチェックインしてるんだけど電話も繋がらないし住所もデタラメでさ、これ警察もんだなと思ったら部屋のキーも宿泊代もベッドの下にあったんだってさ。
You didn't call the police, did you? There was nothing stolen or anything, after all.
親父に言われたよ。んなもんでホテルの評判悪くなったら客が来なくなるだろうが、ついでにそんな現場の話をいちいちオーナーの俺様にあげてくんなってな。
Sounds like Eiichi's father, so yeah.
俺に言わせればそんな仕事の話をいちいち息子にあげてくんなっつうの。俺も飛行に走るわ。
Oh, come on. Your father's a good person. You should take a lesson from him.
おめえらボンプには理解できない悩みだろうな。
Eiichi just kept on sulking. Nothing would stop him now. So a little backstory to Eiichi there. And of course it has to do with, sort of an area that we're investigating right now. How convenient. So that means we were completely played.
ご迷惑をおかけしまして。
After class was over, Usami and I held a strategy meeting. About that Saijou.
はい。
I asked Gonzo about this so-called Great Japan Revolutionary School. He said he'd never heard of it.
よほど規模が小さいのでしょうか。
Who knows? Those organizations are a dime a dozen.
では組織の線から西条を追うのは難しそうですね。
Yeah. In the meantime, Haribe and his crew are combing through the inner city's hotels. And not just hotels, but the subway stations, under bridges, and any other places a person might be staying. They're even checking vacant office buildings.
西条はすでに県外に逃亡している可能性もありますが。
I'm betting that Mao is using Saijou just because he's basically nuts. Like, he thinks he's part of an organization, but he's really just, like, a lone dude who has these crazy ideals. Yeah, I hear you. The creep's probably scared to death by the power of the Soa Alliance by now. Seeing as how that might be the case, Gonzo issued orders last night and sent out over 100 people out of the prefecture to cooperate with the local gangs and collect information about Mao and Saijou. When you tack on the upcoming battle with the Shin'e group, The Sonoyama group has its hands full.
私にできることといえば
Isn't waiting for news the only thing to do? To be more precise, since we failed last time, we can't make rash movements anymore.
原点に帰りましょう。カノンは NKH 杯で優勝しました。魔王の言いつけを無視した以上、母親のイクコさんの命が狙われているはずです。
That's why we're searching for Saijou in the first place.
ですよね。
She's being kind of vague about this. Saijou's a chess piece. Mao prepared for this match. The use of an accomplice represents a potential risk, but also a corresponding return to go along with that risk.
つまり共犯者がいて初めて成り立つ手口でイクコさんを狙っていると
We have to work under that assumption. If Mao could do it himself all along, there'd be no need to recruit someone else. Therefore, Saijou must still be within the city. Isn't that right?
やっぱりそうですよね。西条を捕まえれば魔王の計画を破綻させられるかもしれない。
I sneered. What's wrong? Getting depressed already?
いえいえ、まさか。自分がナイーブになったのは財布を落とした時とペンギンも交尾をすると知った時です。
This girl's got a screw loose.
自分はもう一度西条のアパートを漁ってみるとします。
Alright, don't do anything rash.
分かっています。一応私も被害者候補の一人ですからね。
After her statement, Usami prepared to head home. The happy sound of children's laughter weaved into the surroundings. Mephistophles, Saijou, was sitting on a bench in the Eastern District's park, waiting for Mao to contact him. The elementary school students, ignoring the brisk wind, fought to get into the sandbox and the slide. Saijou thought of his own sister, and of the detective who was in charge of the investigation. Saijou had choked her to death. That sister, who had just started school, whom he loved so much. That angelic smiling face, which unbeknownst to him, suddenly had eyeballs bugging out of their sockets. You killed her. No. That's right. She didn't die. His sister loved him. They would hold hands and go to school together. When bathing, she'd scrub him from top to bottom. She never forgot to give him a good night's kiss. In other words, she must have loved him deeply. What was wrong with what he did? Flowers are meant to be picked when they're most beautiful. Saijou hadn't killed her. He just made her his. It's just those annoying police exaggerated the matter and forced punishment upon him. He spent those long, hard years, the years before he became a legal adult, in that building with the high fences. Wow, so he's completely nuts. Mao's call came.
こんな町外れの公園までは連中も追ってこないようだ。油断なさらないよ。分かっている。あと3人殺すまでは町を離れられない。
Yoshida Kimiko, the woman he had failed to kill earlier. Kanasaki Ikeko, the figure skating coach. And the girl named Usami Haru. His heart was aquiver with anticipation for the murderous plans that would be presented to him in the future. One could almost hear the ecstasy drip from Mao's words.
グランドシリーズファイナルという大会が始まるのです。世界6カ国で開催された大会の最後の決勝戦とでも言うべき華々しい内容です。
Saijou wanted to ask, just what the hell are you talking about? However, not wanting to risk hindering their relationship, he stopped himself.
しかし、初戦は賞金戦です。運営資金に困った国際フィギュアスケート連合が主催する見せ物。それが証拠に、昨シーズンの世界チャンピオンなどは敗北を恐れ、自らの名誉を守るために出場を辞退するのも通例となっている。
Saijou could only mumble some vague confirmations in response.
昨年から導入された新採点方式もフィギュアをつまらなくしている。確かに不正を防ぐ意味で一定の効果を上げているのは認めよう。問題はプログラムだ。今のルールではジャンプを飛べる回数も決まっているし、リンクの端から端まで見事なスパイラルを続ける必要もない。その結果どうなったか。どいつもこいつも似たような演技ばかりではないか。 減点を恐れ挑戦的なプログラムを避けている。派手な転倒など見なくなった。一体どこがフリースケーティングだというのか。
Unbelievably, Mao sighed. This made Saijo a bit insecure.
例えば私は浅いカノンよりもセタマ機構を評価する。理由は基本的なスケーティング技術だ。動きも曲にマッチして非常に美しい。苦境を乗り越え地味な努力を重ねていることがわかる。しかし回転数の多いジャンプ一つで順位がひっくり返ってしまった。容姿が良く受けのいい決め技を持つ人間が勝利する。おかしな時代になってしまったものだ。
Saijo finally understood his comrades' grievances. Thinking about things clearly, each target up until now has had something to do with figure skating.
いや
He just figured this
申し
out.
訳ない。つい長話になってしまいました。
魔王、一つ聞きたい。
His suspicions slipped out of his mouth.
魔王はこの国の現状を憂い、革命を志しているのではなかったか。やけにスケートにこだわるのはなぜだ。
The mysteries just kept piling up. The targets were scum, but still only normal civilians. Why didn't the names of greater evils, such as government leaders and the masterminds behind religious organizations, appear on the list? As he pondered this point, he let up a bit.
今さらすまない。頭の鋭いお前にしかわからない事情があるのかもしれんな。
Saijo didn't want to be hated by the only person to understand him in decades. And Mao had helped him get out of trouble just yesterday. Mao answered with an air of apology.
あなたの疑問はもっともだ。
というと、
私はただフィギュアスケートの現状を嘆いているだけなのです。金儲けに走った連中をこの世から抹殺したかった。そのために利用したのです。
Mao spoke, bitterly. Incredibly, flames of anger didn't roar within Saijo's chest. The emotions of an event long forgotten floated to his heart once again. He remembered a time when his sister broke a toy that he treasured. He remembered his sister coming to him with an honest apology.
これまで協力していただいて感謝します。
Saijo's hand trembled, shaking the phone it held.
ひとまず西日本に逃げるとよろしいでしょう。新幹線もいいですが、夜行バスやフェリーを駆使した方がより安全と言えます。福岡まで着いたらまたご連絡を。台湾行きの船を用意しておきますので、口座を教えていただければ逃走資金を振り込ませて。
待て魔王。
Words burst from his mouth.
誰も降りるとは言っていない。
しかし、
いや、やらせてもらおう。
なぜです。
Saijo made his decision and sighed.
私もお前を騙していたからだ。大日本革新義塾などという組織は存在しない。いや、あるにはあるが、代表も広報も作戦参謀も全部たった一人の構成員が兼任している。つまり私だ。
なんと。
世間は私を異常者だと決めつけている。しかしお前は私を立てて熱意のこもったメッセージを送ってくれた。
There would be no more hesitation. No matter what Mao's true goal was, he would still be Saijo's friend.
教えてくれ。魔王が最も殺したいのは例の3人ではないのだろう。真の標的は。
Saijo said a name. Mao gave a short answer. Yes.
協力しよう。さあ、指示をくれ。
He didn't know when, but the sounds of children playing in the park had completely disappeared. Psycho! Really? Your common courtesy's out the window already? After dinner, Usami suddenly popped in.
あったかいなこの家は。
Don't curl up on the sofa. Get up. Usami rolled around on the couch in her uniform. After a while, she stood up.
いや、それにしても まるで社会とのつながりを持とうとしない人の追跡は難しいですね。
Any leads? Usami shook her head wryly.
電話の請求書があってチェックしましたが、自分と同じくらい安い通話料でした。
That means, like you, he has no friends.
仕事はどうにも日雇いの現場作業なんかがメインみたいですね。ヘルメットと軍手も見つかりましたし、人材派遣会社に登録しているらしく、いくらか給与明細がありました。
So he lived a life without a steady job.
きっちりした真面目な人物です。風俗の会員証とか馬券の切れ端とか、そういうのは見当たりませんでしたし、自炊の跡もありましたし、アイロンやズボンプレッサーもありました。
I guess that just goes to show you that sometimes it's the people that look like, or the people like that who can be the most dangerous.
手がかりになりそうなのは唯一。
Just then, a sound rang out from the front door.
たったいまー。
I'd given Cannon a spare key to the room.
ジース、
キース。や
What's wrong with these two?
ーやー、ウサミンよくいらっしゃいました。汚い家ですが、どうぞごゆっくり。
This is my place.
いや、せっかくだけどもう帰るよ。
Oh, hey. She just said something about a lead.
なんで？遊ぼうよ。
For some reason, Usami kept glancing at my bed.
では。
In a hurry, with her back slumped, she left.
ねえねえ、ウサミン何しに来たの？
Who knows? To get out of the cold, maybe?
そういえばウサミンってあの格好で寒くないのかな？
A reasonable question, Cannon. Probably. Let's just chalk it up to her strange nature.
うーん？
What are you looking at? Why is your face so close to mine? I could see myself reflected in her eyes.
なんか隠してるな。
What?
ソファーが荒れてるぞ。ウサミンと何してたんだ？
We didn't do anything, okay? Wait, that's... There was a cell phone on the sofa. I think it's Usami's. It must have fallen out when she was rolling around.
ゴロゴロしてたの？
By herself, yes. Oh well, I'll give it to her at school tomorrow.
うん。なんかおかしいな。最近パパも構ってくれないし、のんちゃんの周りで事件が起こってるぞ。これは
Papa's just busy with his end-of-the-year responsibilities.
コーチの周りにパパの部下みたいな人がいるのもおかしいぞ。
Is that so? I knew she'd notice.
コーチ守られてるみたいだったよ。トイレの前までついてくるんだもん。
I don't think a lie would work here.
なんでコーチが守られてるのかな。ヒルトン先生とか大会の偉い人とかならわかるけど、兄さんどう思う？
I don't know. Stop talking and go take your bath.
さては兄さんもグルだな。のんちゃんを驚かせようったってそうはいかないぞ。
Don't worry about it. Didn't you say that you had no interest in anything besides skating?
あ、そうだった。兄さんいいこと言うな。
Her smile was immediately restored. The finals start tomorrow, right?
うん。女子はしあさってからね。
Alright, then hurry and take a bath.
はい。
She skipped over to the changing room. If she wasn't able to change moves that quickly, there's a chance she wouldn't be as famous as she is now. Just a single performance from her can have a major influence on a number of people. Whether or not a jump is successful will change the number of spectators and the mood of the sponsors. And this time, her performance is even related to a death threat. If she worried about every little thing, then she wouldn't be able to do what she does. Of course, her continuous practice has taken away a normal school life, and there's no such thing as a person who ignores everything else and just lives to skate. Because humans aren't machines. Behind Cannon's casual smile lies a mountain of bottled up emotions. If she found out that her mother's life was in danger... Chapter 3! Still. Usami Vision! Haru wandered through the residential district. There was no wind. The air was dry. It was only moments past noon, and from the time and from time to time she spotted mothers who had just finished preparing lunch. After turning around the same corner for the third time, Haru concluded that she wasn't cut out for stakeouts after all. Carrying a convenience store bag just wasn't enough to disguise her as a normal pedestrian. Wearing her uniform in a peaceful residential area during school hours already made her an attention grabber. Forget about her hair. The target of her stakeout was the hospital she now had walked past numerous times. Its grand entrance bore the sign, Internal Medicine and Neurology. The idea behind the observation came from the hospital issue medication bag she had found the night before in a trash heap near Saijou's house. Inside the torn package was a slip of paper with the medicine's warnings and directions. This told Haru that Saijou had some neurological disease. After finding 3 baggies in the same garbage bag, she inferred that he visits the hospital quite often. The chances might be slim, though. She'll be back to square one if he decided to change hospitals. Maou would probably foresee this and command him to do so. Saijou's house was searched, so it would be natural for the two to conclude that the Yakuza were lurking near the hospital. Even so, Haru still insists on performing the stakeout alone. She has her reasons. The pill bags were not in the trash heap the day before yesterday. They were nowhere to be found when she had fallen into Mao's trap, and determined that Saijou had fled to the Plaza Hotel. And with a whopping 3 of them in total, Haru found it hard to believe that she had simply missed them. In other words, someone left them there after the first search. Horibe and his cronies believed that Saijou would never return to the room, so no men were spared to guard the apartment. Thus, if someone did indeed return, nobody would have known. But that someone was not Saijou. It was Maou. Haru's hypothesis ran like so. Unlike Saijou, Maou had never revealed himself. Why then would he hesitate to come face to face with the men from the Yakuza? He could walk right by them, and they'd never be the wiser. As for Mao's motive behind planting the medication bags in Saijou's trash, Haru bit her lip again as she as the thought forced itself upon her mind. The taste of her previous defeat still lingered in her mouth. It was probably some attempt at sparking another game. Let's just hope I don't get into trouble for this, Haru thought. It should be okay, I'm over 18 after all. The Grand Prix of figure skating finals were slated to begin today. Figure skating fanatic Aizawa Eiichi skipped school to watch the men's match, which starts on the first day. Hey Tsubaki, where's Usami? Nah, she just left her cell phone in my apartment yesterday. Tsubaki only suggested that because she knew that I was likely to miss Usami due to my skipping. Nah, it's no big deal. Usami, you strange girl. What's going on? Last night, you said you got a hold of a clue. Are you moving ahead on your own? Maou was right. Saijou sat alone in the back seat of a rented car. He pulled the newly bought curtain open just the slightest bit, carefully took a peek at the hospital outside the car window, and found the girl wandering about as expected. Her name was Usami Haru, a member of the Yakuza, and the girl who claimed to be Fujiwara Norika when they met on the docks. Maou described this girl with the ghostly long hair as his greatest obstacle. He had warned Saijou about the outstanding insight hiding behind her dispirited appearance and actions, but Saijou found it hard to believe. She paced back and forth in the residential area with her arms wrapped about herself, probably trying to shield herself from the cold. Saijou ruminated on Mao's advice. Kill her if you get the chance. Usami will probably be the only one to notice the trap behind the medicine bags. Detectives know to watch the scene of the crime, but the Mafia would never discover the truth. They'll just start searching elsewhere after they conclude that you won't be returning to the apartment. Maou was absolutely right. Saijou glanced around and no signs of Yakuza were anywhere to be seen. When the time is right, engage her at your own discretion. Remember that Usami may be leading some thugs. Even if you find Usami alone, don't forget the possibility of others hiding nearby. Lastly, when you launch your attack, snatch Usami's phone away from her as a first priority. Separate her from her reinforcements. He would pull Usami into the car, then find a quiet spot to kill her. Maou would take care of the corpse. Okay, now where do I go from here? In the end, Usami never came to class. I'm probably overthinking this. Still, Usami didn't seem the type to skip school for no reason, and I have no way of contacting her. I know surprisingly little about Usami. Her address is still a mystery, and whether she lives by herself is not really in the clear either. Just as I was mindlessly staring at Usami's cell phone, it rang. Who could it be? The number didn't seem to be one Usami had saved as a contact, so it's probably not Tsubaki or Cannon. Could it be Tokita Yuki? No, judging from Usami's behavior, there's no way she's mustered the courage to make that call yet. So that means this is a friend of Usami's whom I have no knowledge of. The phone continues to ring. Alright, here goes. I decide to answer it, and press the call button. I'll just keep silent for a moment. Only, this moment would go by a lot faster if the caller would introduce herself. She must be calling from someplace quiet, as there's no background noise at all. To the point, I'm starting to believe she's holding her breath. This must not be a very close friend of hers, but then again, a lot of Usami's friends are weirdos, so you can never be too sure. Dozens of seconds pass, yet we both remain silent. What a deadlock. May I ask who this is? After pausing for a few seconds, the caller responded. A man's voice. He sounds like he's in his 30s. Yeah, I'm Usami's friend. She left her cell phone somewhere, so I'm holding onto it for now. If your business is urgent, I can pass a message to her. What was your name again? He hung up after he finished. There was something unnatural about that conversation just now, wasn't there? No doubt about it, man. Let's save the game. Boo! No doubt about it. Right. It's nothing more than a hunch, but the man claimed to be her uncle just now. How many kids nowadays are willing to give their uncle their phone number? The ones that do must be really close to them, right? However, if that was her dear uncle, why would he ask if he had the right number? Why would he call her by her surname? Of course, there might be some complicated relationship between the two. Even so, that uncle was too cautious to start talking before I did. It was too creepy to be true, even for a relative of Usami. The first thing that comes to mind is that the man just now was Saijo. When Usami met him in the Western District, she gave him her phone number. Saijo, for some reason, was trying to make contact with Usami. Why? If Saijo's already on Mao's side, then there's no way that he doesn't know Usami's identity. If he's already clear about Usami, then what was his intention in calling her? Though I'm still a bit confused, I better find Usami as soon as possible. I should get in touch with Haribe first, though, and make sure they're on standby. Usami didn't have her telephone with her right now. Saijo sneered. A man who seemed to be Usami's friend picked up the phone. He said that Usami had dropped her cell phone. Though his silence at first made Saijo suspicious, Usami just continued walking. There was no indication that she took a phone call. Kill her if you get the chance. He had already driven around the area many times, and there was no one nearby that looked like Yakuza. Okay, let's do this. Usami rounded a corner, leaving Saijo's line of sight. Nevertheless, she'd come back again sooner or later. Saijo left the car and hid himself behind the corner she'd be returning around. Let's catch her off guard, shall we? He leaned against a telephone pole, listening carefully. Tap, tap. the clear sound of footsteps rang in his ears. Saijo reached into his coat pocket. Inside was a spray women use for self-defense against molesters. Once one sprays it in the target's face, he'll tear up and sneeze continuously for a short period of time, ultimately losing the ability to defend himself. Fortunately, there are no passerbys in sight. Usami's footsteps grew louder. Because of Mao's trap, her attention should be focused on the hospital entrance right about now. It was her only lead in catching Saijo, so she has no choice but to follow it. The bravery required to face this alone, despite recognizing it as a trap, is worthy of praise. She was approaching. Very soon, she'd be turning this way. Saijo held the spray tight in his pocket. Hoping to scare Usami into a momentary daze, he quickly dashed out from the street corner. And immediately thereafter, he grew as still as a statue. It wasn't Usami. The fingertip already placed on the spray's trigger froze. However, he was already out of the corner. The slowly approaching footsteps had not come from Usami, but a passing businessman. Because he had been spying on Usami from inside the quiet car, he hadn't been able to distinguish those footsteps from those of his target. The man gave Saijo a suspicious glare, then passed him by. A shy-toned voice spoke up. A young hunched-over girl with her hands in her pockets stood before him. Saijo was outraged and stepped straight for the girl. Saijo was not shaken at all. He simply nodded. She was referring to the spray. The girl might be alarmed by it, as she slanted to the side and stared at Saijo without blinking. Saijo returned the spray to his pocket and observed his opponent's actions.
Sign?
What's she up to this time? He knows he looks puzzled. Could Usami possibly think he doesn't know of her identity yet?
そんな約束をしたかな、宇佐美。
The girl had a vacant look on her face.
自分藤原ですけど。
She said, tilting her head slightly.
嘘をつくな。
はい。
とぼけても無駄だ。お前は宇佐美春。暴力団の手先だろ。
Saijo used a strong tone. He wanted to shut her up as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, on the shoulder of the road, two housewives had stopped walking and started yakking.
どうしたんですか？学生証見せましょうか？
Usami began to rummage through the pocket of her uniform.
どこかな？ちょっと待ってくださいね。いっぱい物入れてるから。
いや、いい。勘違いだった。
Deciding to just play along for now, Saijo reached out and stopped Usami.
あなたは探偵さんとかですか？
どうしてそう思うんだ？
いや、宇佐美って女を探しているのかなと。前会った時もなんか血とか見ましたし。
探しているとしたらなんだ？
ほう。いや、まあ自分に協力できることがあればと。
では聞きたい。さっきからなぜここら辺をうろついていたんだ？
Her eyes shot open in a panic.
何のことでしょう？
警察に連絡してやってもいいんだぞ。
Usami seemed to have given up on resisting. She answered weakly.
いえ、実はこの近くに私の大好きな人の家がありまして。
やっぱりストーカーじゃないか。
すみません。でもその人のことは本当昔からでして。携帯の番号はおろか、メルアドすら暗記してます。
You really know how to act, Saijo thought. But how long should I keep up this farce?
詳しく話を聞きたい。
と言いますと？
事務所まで来てもらおうか。
Saijo made use of the situation and spoke as if he were a real detective. He took a look around. The housewives were still standing there, making their ruckus.
いや、知らない人についていってはいけないと習ってまして。
なら警察に通報する。
Suddenly, Usami's expression showed a complete reversal of mood.
警察に通報されると困るのは、 あなたじゃないですか、西条さん。
何？
He released her arm right away. Saijo's heart began to quiver before her inquisitional tone and eyes.
魔王はお元気ですか？先日はやってくれましたね。
何の真似だ、宇佐美春。
もうおしまいですよ。浅井権蔵さんに喧嘩をふっかけた以上、法の裁きも期待しない方がいい。
大した自信だな。私を捕まえてから言え。
あなたはもう終わりです。
くだ。
You're the one about to die. Saijo took another look down the road. The meddling housewives were nowhere to be seen.
どうか今のうちに自首してください。警察に逃げ込むのがあなたが唯一助かる道です。
そんな話をしに一人でのこのこ現れたのか？
言っておきますが、私を捕まえようとしても無駄です。誰にも話したことはありませんが、格闘には自信があります。
She bent her knees slightly as she spoke.
例えば、あなたが今懐に隠し持っているスプレーですが、まず風向きを考えましょう。あなたは風下にいます。
Saijo fell silent.
さらに、今さら逃げようとしても無駄です。私はこの辺りの地図を頭に叩き込んでいます。
A violent aura exuded from her every pore. Her eyes, a teenage girl would be the last person you'd expect to find them with. Steel-cold emotions, slowly explaining the logic behind everything. And that tone. Oh, that tone. It was like speaking to a mirror image of Mao. Still, Usami was a fool. She thought his only weapon was the spray. She might have forgotten. A man from the Yakuza lost quite a bit of blood just the day before yesterday. Saijo idly wondered if that man had died yet. He had been stabbed right in the face, and fell into a seizure right away.
わかった。私もこれまでということだな。
Saijo arranged his breath and tightly gripped the knife in his pocket.
降参ですか？
あ
結構です。
Though her voice softened, Usami's gaze showed no sign of letting her guard down. She'd been staring at Saijo's pocket the whole time. But even so, at such a close distance, she had no chance of stopping him. If your eyes meet theirs, they should be killed. Mao's words floated into his mind. His hand shook. Though there was no hesitation, it seemed murder was not something he had grown accustomed to. He slightly adjusted the knife's position. Violent heartbeats threatened to tear his chest asunder. The girl's eyes widened slightly. She started to look around as if waking from a dream. Saijo made his decision in the same split second. Now's my chance. Saijo gave his body to the bloodlust. For some reason, his murdered sister's face superimposed onto Usami's. Suddenly, the sharp screech of tires shearing the ground pierced his ears, and the hand that held the knife hesitated. Huh? A luxury car known to be favored by Yakuza came to a sudden stop and parked behind Saijo. Another parked in front of him. The swarm of vehicles continued to grow until the road had been completely sealed. 3 or 4 huge men, some bald with crew cuts, kicked the doors open and jumped out of the cars. What? How on earth? One Yakuza screamed. Saijo, like a deer caught in the headlights, failed to give proper resistance. He merely shielded his head and chest with his arms. But how? There's no way. Saijo was forced to the ground in the blink of an eye, and their fists landed on him like raindrops.
早く逃げるべきでしたね、西条さん。
A sound poured down on him alongside the violence. He thought for a moment that it had been his sister's voice, but that of course would be impossible.
なぜだ、宇佐美。
Though Saijo had already been pressed to the ground by the strong men, the confusion in his mind still screamed out.
どうやってこんなこいつらを貴様。
Usami looked like she didn't know how to answer, then shook her head.
どうやってと言われましても、携帯で連絡を取っただけですよ。
携帯。
なんで逃げないのかと思ったら、そういうことですか。 私が携帯を一つしか持っていないと勘違いしていたんですね。連絡手段がないから応援なんて呼べるはずがないと。
She used the phone that Mao gave her. I get it. Okay.
2つ持っていたんだな。
ええ、まあ今時の女子学園生は誰でも2つ持っています。というのは嘘で、もう一つの携帯はあなたの飼い主から先月プレゼントされたものです。
A text message? When she didn't have the time to spare. Saijo racked his brain to the limit, hoping to find the answer.
覚醒書を出そうとしてポケットの中を探っていた時だな。
惜しい。しかしそれでは私は今頃あなたに殺されていたかもしれません。
いつだ。
多分あなたがここに来た時です。日が暮れ始めた頃に見慣れない乗用車が停車しているものですから。
しかしあの車はカーテンがあって外から中の様子は見えないはずだ。
ええ、あなたの顔までは見えませんでした。しかし人影くらいは見えました。運転席ではなく後部座席に座っていたのは運の尽きでしたね。
It was Mao who had advised sitting in the back seat.
後部座席に座れば運転手か誰か人を待っている風を装うことができる。付近の住民や通行人の目もいくらか緩和されます。探偵も使う張り込みの基本ですね。
This girl one-upped Mao? Saijo finally understood why a man like Mao would be cautious about an everyday schoolgirl like her.
あなたの車は一向に発進する気配がありません。狙いは私なのではないかと思っても不思議はないでしょう。
襲撃すらも予期していたと。
こんな住宅地です。あなたが私を襲うとしたら通りの角を曲がった瞬間でしょう。そう思って角を曲がるとき私は必ず誰かと一緒でした。
When Saijo thought back on it, he'd only heard one set of footsteps as he prepared to ambush Usami. Only the footsteps of the male commuter. Usami must have been walking quietly, ready for him.
あなたと相対した後は適当なことを喋って時間を稼ぐだけでした。
Saijo was stunned. His actions had been seen through from the very beginning. The world around him grew dark. A voice evolved in Saijo's ears as he lay in the lightless pit. Don't, Oni-chan. He gave himself to the concrete, exhausted. The fists of the men around him greeted his face repeatedly. It was a tragic scene. He could only withstand the shower of blows. Blows so tenaciously brutal that it was hard to even imagine their deliveries as human. I'm scared. Don't kill me. A voice echoed in his ears. Don't kill me, Oni-chan.
お疲れ様でした。
His sister's nostalgic voice was suddenly cut off. I don't think my voice is his sister's voice, but you know. Usami came to my house again late that night.
西条はどうなりました？
He's sitting in hell right now. He's probably been brought to the underground chamber in that building on Central Boulevard for torturing.
自分も西条に聞きたいことがあるのですが。
Can it wait until tomorrow? He's prey that took some considerable effort to catch. I'm sure Haribe is having a field day.
お楽しみ中ってことですか。
Usami furrowed her brows. You know, that text message you sent made me really nervous.
急いで欲しかったので。
No subject, just the word health and the hospital's name.
ヘルプよりも緊迫感があったでしょ。
But it was from an unknown address. How did you know my number anyway? Did you have it registered?
いえいえ、空で言えます。大好きな浅井さんですから。
How disgusting.
話は変わりますが、最近カノンと同棲してんすか？
Yeah.
カノンはどうすか？
I think she might have noticed our mess, but she seems to be trying hard not to worry about it.
いえいえ、今日殺されかけた私です。そういうことを聞いているんじゃありません。
Huh?
ここで畳みかけますが、浅井さんは1月1日とかお暇ですか？
Go out on a limb with what?
お暇ですか？
It's like she's not really giving me a choice here. January 1st, that's New Year's Day.
めでたい日ですね。
I'm the son of a Yakuza boss, you know. I can't skip the New Year's events.
ですから、 ちょっとだけでよろしいんですがね。
I don't know. That morning, maybe? If we went to the shrine around 4 or 5, it might work out.
決まりですね。
Wait. What's decided?
要は私を選べってことです。
How very direct. Oh, just get out of here. It was so exhausting to speak to bizarre people like her.
では
Bye, Usami. Usami slowly stepped to the door. She turned back and gave me a look, her long hair swinging happily.
緊張した。
Usami left in satisfied, relieved spirits. What's with that girl? What if... A horrible thought came to my mind. What if she really does have feelings for me? No, not a chance. I shook the image out of my head. It's all that pestering she does. It's all of that pestering she does of me that's got me thinking such things. There's no reason for Usami to like me in the first place. Cut the crap, brain. It's time for work. Soon enough, Cannon returned.
やっぱ兄さんちはいい匂いがするな。
Hey, I poured you a bath.
やったー、兄さん大好き。
She hugged me tightly all of a sudden. Maybe it was because Usami had me thinking weird things, but for the first time in my life, I was conscious of a certain fact. The fact that Cannon was a girl. Luckily, my mind calmed down right away. What am I thinking? As long as I'm following Gonzo, I'll never reach happiness. Because I'll never be able to be by my mother's side, as I've always wished to. What a bizarre situation. The next morning, a man identifying himself as Maou, me of course, arrived at the headquarters of the Sano Corporation.
またフィギュアスケートの大会が始まったわけだが
You're interested in my progress.
芳しくないようだね
I'm sowing my seeds right now.
ぜひその種の開花時期を教えてほしいものだね
All they need is time. Don't worry about it. Things are falling into place as we speak. Good lord, this man fusses over the most asinine things.
もう一つ聞きたいことがある
Even so, Mia's horrid complexion betrayed his worrisome nature.
親衛会はわかるな総和連合の中でも小粒の集団だが最も古風で喧嘩気質な連中だ
What about them?
とぼけるな武器の横流しをしているのは君だろ
Maybe I am.
今親衛会とその山組で小競り合いが起きているその山組といえば親衛会とは比べ物にならんほど大きい組織だ
Are you implying that I'm orchestrating the conflict between the two groups?
それ以外に考えられんがね
Look, Mr. Somiya, this has nothing to do with you.
君が関わっているのであればいずれうちにも警察の手が及ぶ
Apparently, he's worried I'll betray him. I'm not an employee of this company. It's only natural for him to suspect that I would gladly sacrifice the company when the time came. I do not intend to bring any trouble down upon this company. Excuse me. My words bore a calmness to veil their threatening edge. After all, Sano Corporation is my father's company. Somiya looked shocked initially, but he quickly fathomed my statement and smiled.
信じよう君は魔王だったなもともと現実にいるはずのない存在だ
They say faith is power, Mr. Somiya. However, the application of faith demands abandoning one's own thoughts and ideas. After seeing that there was nothing more for me to do, I bid farewell to Somiya. Now then... Saijo hasn't contacted me in a while. I probably have Usami to thank for this. My only concern is how much Saijo will reveal. I've taken precautionary steps, after all. I don't think he'll give up the plot too easily. It's hard to say for certain. Will he talk? Well, before tomorrow? Oh well. All I can do right now is prepare for the big event. As the time neared noon, Gonzo called for me. Usami was there also. Gonzo shifted his posture and stood up.
遅い。何をしていた、京介。
I'm very sorry. I haven't been feeling very well recently. He's not a man that accepts excuses, but lying wouldn't have gotten me anywhere. However, Gonzo seemed to have something more important than my education to talk about today.
例の男だが、何も吐かん。
Saijo didn't talk? But wasn't Horibe-san left in charge of the interrogation? Horibe is the single most sadistic being I know of in this world. Water, fire, whips, beasts. He'll use any technique ever conceived until the prisoner forgets he's even a human. Of course, that's probably why Gonzo leaves such things to him.
あとは自白剤打つくらいだが、それも確実とは。失敗すればただ死ぬだけだ。
So he's sworn loyalty to Mao? My question simply disappointed Gonzo.
喋ったの最後、殺されると思っているんだ。
Right. Things like loyalty have no face in the meaning of violence and death. At that, the silent Usami opened her mouth.
つまり西条はまだ生きたいと思っているわけですね。
Gonzo nodded.
調べて分かったが、奴は幼少の頃、実の妹を考察していた。その後、自立支援施設に入ったが、
A healthy person in his situation might have even been drawn to suicide.
奴はこう思っている。俺は何も悪くない。なぜ自分が死なねばならんのか。
That's beyond depraved. This scenario has already escaped the limits of my comprehension.
自分に任せていただけませんでしょうか。
The interrogation? You? That's a terrible idea. The man who hasn't budged after horrific torture won't reveal information to a person like Usami. Not to mention that Usami is the person who landed him in this mess. If anything, she'll be the one person he won't confess to. Naturally, Gonzo will understand that.
よし、やれ。
ありがとうございます。
But father...
何の打算もなく名乗り出たわけではあるまい。
His gaze crashed explosively against that of Usami. Even she seemed to be scared right now, as her fingers trembled slightly.
では早速。
Still refusing to accept the idea, I followed Usami out of the room. Hey, Usami!
分かってます。自分には無理だとおっしゃりたいのでしょ。
And you do? You have no idea what that man has been put through over the past 12 hours. What makes you think a person who withstood that kind of torture would confess to you?
はい。自分には無理でしょ。
Stop kidding around. This isn't the time for jokes. Cannon's up again tomorrow. Mao's bound to pull something.
承知してます。あまり時間はありませんね。
Right, so...
ええ、もう我が身を捧げる覚悟です。
Huh? Usami fiddled with the phone I returned to her last night, dialing a number. She wore a grave expression. The call connected.
いや、もしもし
She's calling Yuki, isn't she? Alright, but it has been a long episode, so this is where I'm going to end it for today. Goofy music in tow. So, thank you guys very much for watching, as always, and I will see you all next time.